The Chief Equity Officer for the City of Jackson, John Willis, and from Isaiah's Hub Youth Center, the founder, Jay Willis. Welcome to the show.
Man, thank you so much for having us, Bart. Thank you.
Father and son.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And both of you were presenters on Friday morning at the MLK breakfast. You guys did a great job.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We enjoyed it, man. It's outstanding. Chamber of Commerce just did a phenomenal job. There was a lot of people there, so much support from the Jackson community, and that just means the world, man. It means we're outstanding event. We enjoyed it.
Now that song you performed, you actually wrote that.
Yes, sir. So I don't know. Do you remember the Black History Tour Group with Shirley
Yes.
Caesar?
And
I
know you just gave her a shout out.
Yes,
Late
most definitely. With Shirley,
Heads,
I said Shirley Caesar. Shirley Pitts, Jackson's own Shirley Pitts. She had asked me to write something with that context. Our time has come, and that song came up as a result of that. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think that we've actually done that since the Black History Tour Group. So it's been a while. So some people, when you see the sign out on the Brown Street and Michigan Ave, home of Jackson's historic Black History Tour Group, Shirley Pitts was the founder of that. And she just did an outstanding job of working with young people and teaching history in a way it hadn't been taught before.
And it's too bad that the group doesn't still exist. And
Yes.
Shirley was the driving force behind that.
But that was a huge time commitment. I don't know if you know, Bart, they traveled to Washington, D.C. They traveled to a lot of different schools doing skits and things to bring harmony, to talk about diversity. And this is before everybody started with the DEI stuff. She was doing this ahead of her time. And it was a time commitment. So nobody really jumped on that and said, okay, I'll get that done. But she was phenomenal with that group.
Yeah, I know that she said went to Washington, they went to the White House.
Yes, sir.
Took students to the HBCUs.
That's right. That's right. Yes, sir. They did a lot of good things. So.
Well, the history that they performed and educated with, it's still something that, you on Friday morning talked, about history, specifically the collective illusion. And I really liked your comments about that. Jay, what did you mean by collective illusion?
The collective illusion, as I stated on Friday morning, is a social lie. And so essentially it's a belief that a group is right, and most people who are in a collective illusion, or they don't stand up to a collective illusion, is because they believe that others in the group won't stand up. Others in the group won't speak up, and because they don't speak up, then things remain the same, kind of like segregation. But during the Children's Crusade, when they saw, the youth getting, terrorized and a lot of different things with the water hoses and the dogs, people really were like, do I really agree with this? Like, I really don't agree with this. And that's how the collective illusion was broken, and so.
Yeah, it was interesting. See some of the stories talking about the earlier days of the civil rights movement, where there were white students that sat at the lunch
That's right.
counters.
Yes, sir. Most definitely.
Not a lot. I mean, they didn't have a lot of bodies with them.
Right.
But they were challenging the collective illusion, though.
And it's like the student marches, Brown versus Board of Education. There were white students that walked with them as well. A lot of people don't talk about that, but when those things start happening, like Jay said, then you break that collective illusion, and that's huge. It's huge. It's huge when you stand up. It gives somebody else the courage to stand up.
That's right.
Well, one of the things that you talked a little bit about, Isaiah's Hub, and that's an organization that you founded.
Yes.
And this is your first time on our show, so tell us a little bit about what we aim to do at Isaiah's Hub.
So Isaiah's Hub, just a little bit about what it is. It's a youth center. It's a nonprofit youth community center. And what we aim to do is focus on core life skills, providing a safe learning environment for at-risk youth and all youth at that matter, But we have after-school programs. We're open 3 to 6 every day, Monday through Friday, and on Friday nights from 9:30 to midnight. And so we provide a safe spot for kids to stay. Like, that's a Friday night photo that's going right now. We provide pizza, games, activities, a safe spot for kids to stay off the streets. Growing up, we had the King Center, and there was a couple other different programs, but I know that the kids at Jackson definitely need a space where they can stay off the streets and be safe. And so that's what we do, a little bit about what we do.
Well, one of the things that I think is pretty spectacular about the Willis family, for the most part, all of you could have been far more richer and successful if you had taken opportunities that were offered to you over the years. You
Yes, sir.
you had a chance to tour with a Broadway
Right,
show.
travel, yeah.
Kari,
Big River, yeah.
retired from his career
Yeah.
with Indianapolis Colts, and I know you have turned down opportunities to stay and serve in Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
That I know you're very proud of that, but
Yes.
what about the upbringing of your family?
I don't know, Brian. I don't know what I was doing wrong to make them not go get that money. But I don't know. Just to be honest, I think my mother was a person of service. She was a long time choir director in church, teacher, things like that. My wife's mother was usher board director, different things like that. So I think it's just a combination of what they're saying. My uncle George Jones, there's still a George Jones Citizenship Day in Sylvania, Georgia. He was a teacher, and he was the head of a community center in Sylvania, Georgia. So those are some of the things that we've seen. And I think just when you're around it and you're a part of it, sometimes you think, I thought once they see what you're doing, that they may not want to be a part of it. But eventually, it becomes a part of who they are. And I have to give my wife a lot of credit too, because a lot of the principles that we believe in, she really, really instilled deeply in them. That it's more to it than just yourself. It's more to it than just yourself. And then if you, like you say, if you stand up and you start to help, there's a feeling that you get, there's a reward that you get that I don't care what anybody says. It's not the same as a monetary reward. It's something different. When you can see young people develop, when you can see young people starting to absorb some of the principles and things that you believe in, man, it's a great feeling. There's nothing better than that. And when you're embraced by the community, the way our family has been embraced by the Jackson community, it's a strong feeling, man. I have achieved no successes at all without the support of the Jackson community. Like my seniors at King Center, the youth that have grown up that are now adults are supporting their children. It's funny at the dinner, one of my seniors, so she hadn't seen me in a while, so I said, hey, how you doing? I was going to speak to her, I won't call her name on TV, she have a fit. She was like, I thought that was you. She said, but your face is a little bigger now. So she was giving me a nice subtle message. The thing with seniors, they're very direct, and that's how they've been with me. At King Center, if they had a problem with something, they would come to me and tell me. Let me know what they needed to see, and let me know what they expected, and the support that we've had from the City of Jackson, whether that's been through the Recreation Department, whether that's been through our City Council persons, Mr. Breeding and then Mrs. Arlene Robinson, now through our mayor, we just had great support. Our City Manager Jonathan Green, we've just been supported by our community. So we want to reflect well and do what we can to help our community.
Well, I think it's great that organizations that you mentioned actually have departments now to make sure that there's equity and belonging and diversity.
Right.
10 years ago, we didn't have that.
Right. You didn't have that. I think obviously during the George Floyd thing, I think that was kind of a transitioning stage for a lot of places within our country. But I can say that when you go back to like Mrs. Shirley Pitts, long before DEI was a popular phrase and term, she's out there doing that work because she's seen something that was missing. Mrs. Pitts was an English teacher, and I mean a tough English teacher. She wasn't just a regular English teacher.
And a Friday night teacher.
Yeah, Friday night teacher at church. Yeah, Friday night class teacher. But she had high standards, but the thing that she noticed was missing was Black history, in particular to her. It was very important that she shared some of those conversations, that she had those conversations with people. Courageous conversations. She was going to different schools where they weren't getting Black history lessons, for certainly, but she felt comfortable having uncomfortable conversations. And that's where I think Jackson is getting right now. We have to become comfortable with uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah, and I think about my growing up years. I grew up in Vermont, where it was a very white state, and there weren't Black history lessons in my school.
Yeah.
I was alive when MLK was assassinated.
Yes.
You weren't. The kids you're dealing with today, he's someone in history.
Right.
The farther away that we get from the life of Dr. King on Earth, is it harder to get kids to understand what he did?
Right.
That's a really, really, really good question. It's interesting because I'm going to be doing something today after we leave here with the kids. We're open today from 3 to 6. And that's my goal, is to remind them, you guys are living in a total different time than what Dr. King was living in and what he stood for and how far we have come. And so I think to a degree it could be difficult, but I think that the difficulty is in more of the attention span. that they have nowadays.
Everything digital, yeah.
Versus
They get it right
They might
now,
tell
yeah.
me, they might tell me, no, I know Dr. King, da 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 da. You know, they see it on TikTok, might be doing something
Right.
for them or whatever. You know, they get information so fast. But we want to more hone in on the personalness of Dr. King, you know, and that personalness of equality, you know, and being diverse, been in a room with someone who's not the same skin tone as you know, but you can just have a general conversation with them and love for them, you know, have a good moral code inside of you, good character, you know, how important that is. And that's what he believed. And that changes the world, and it has changed the world for the better, so.
John, you
Patience of it.
you introduced Anthony
Yes,
Parker on.
most definitely.
Yeah,
yes,
a
yes.
friend of yours.
Most definitely, close
And-
friend, yes.
Anthony, like you, not from
Yeah.
Jackson.
Right.
You grew up.
Gobbler, Mississippi. Yep. I'm
Yeah.
Savannah, Georgia. Moved here from Savannah, Georgia to Detroit. And to come, but when you come here, we're all here in Jackson now. Anthony's done a phenomenal job in the community, doing the work that he does, teaching lessons, owning his business, and doing some different things right now. It's just, there are so many different organizations and people that are working together for Jackson to make it a better place, to make it more diverse, more equitable, more inclusive. There's a book called Chop Wood, Carry Water. My son gave it to me, my son. And so in it, it talks about a bamboo tree. And I think with DEI, it's kind of like a bamboo tree. A guy plants a bamboo seed, he goes back that first year, nothing. Goes back the second, he's still watering, taking care of the ground, nothing. Third year, wet water and taking care of it, nothing. Roots are growing all this time. Fourth year, nothing. And that fifth year, say a bamboo tree sprouts up about 60 feet in the air. Everybody sees that 60 foot and they want that right now, but they don't see that work that went into it. Mm-hmm. They don't understand, they don't see that. The thing is, it's important right now, we just keep putting in the work. Keep putting in the work until we see that growth that we want to see.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately a lot more work has to be
It
done.
has to be, of course.
And it was
Of
for
course it
you
will.
growing up, like Anthony talked a little bit about growing up in the South, and you know your phrase "collective illusion," where the South, where that really was more in evident. You experienced a different kind of growing up than people in Jackson.
Most definitely. So I grew up, keep in mind, my grandfather was a sharecropper, which means he had to work somebody else's property to work his own property for food and money. My mother was a Savannah State College, historically black college student that participated in sit-ins and different things like that. Mm-hmm. When we came to Michigan the first time, we came from California, my mother rode a bus. On that bus, she would stop. I was a baby at the time on a bottle. She would stop and she needed to get milk. But after hours, she was not allowed to go into the places to buy milk. So sometime there was a lady that was supposed to be going a different route. When she found out my mother was with me with a baby, this is a white female. When she found out my mother needed that milk, she stayed on the bus 3 hours past her stop to make sure my mother had what she needed going to Detroit. When we moved here, so it was a different place. The experiences that sometimes people think are just far-fetched or things you read about in books, these are things that people really live through. And when you get to see those things, you get to talk about some of those things, it affects you differently. It affects you differently. So my approach is, I want to be able to share my experiences and the experiences of my mother, of my grandfather, of some of my relatives, my aunts and uncles, some of the stories that we've told, so that people understand that these things are indeed personal. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It's what shapes us all different. I'm sure if I talk to you about growing up in Vermont, it's nothing like growing up the way I grew up. Mm-hmm. But the fact that we have things in common now, and we're doing the same type of work, it just goes. So as people, when we come together, man, anything's possible. I truly believe that. People will doubt me for it or criticize me for it. I don't care. It's not important to me. I understand what the overall goal is. I understand what I'm trying to achieve. And I'm understanding that unless we start to have those understandings of what's important and what we have in common and what are the things we need to address to meet equity, to address diversity, to address inclusion of all people, of all races, not just blacks. I'm talking Hispanics, I'm talking Asians, I'm talking whatever we need to embrace to make our country, that country that we talk about. Like Dr. King said, just live up to what we have on paper. We've already said it on paper. Let's live up to it.
Yeah, and it's still happening today. Just this past weekend, an Asian student got knifed because she was Asian in Indiana.
Wow.
So I
That's
appreciate
ridiculous.
The gifts. Obviously, you've gotten a lot of gifts, but I think you've given them back hundredfold to this
Yes, sir.
community. The Willis family, thanks for all that,
Appreciate that, bud.
you give our community.
We appreciate it.
Appreciate that.
Thanks to this community. Thanks to JTV for all this. I was just looking, Brian. I was like, wow, now your graphics have gone to like
I know.
super huge level. You know what I'm saying? Every time I come in, I tell him all the time. When I came in, he interviewed me first with a little tiny switch on the desk. He had to control the camera too.
Wow.
So he was moving the camera, and the switch was broke. So he can't. You thought the switch was broke there. And Brian, you remember that?
I do.
You remember he was out of
I
Jackson
know.
Crossing?
I
yeah.
remember because you reminded.
Yeah, but that's just hilarious to me to see where we are now. All the cameras, the lights. I feel like I'm like NBC Studios here. You know, this is huge. You guys do a phenomenal job, March. The presentation of the sports, the presentation of different perspectives of our community, different businesses. What you guys do is phenomenal. You are greatly appreciated at Jackson.
Thanks. We appreciate that.
Yes,
Thanks,
sir.
John.
Very well.
I agree.
Yes, sir.
I think Jackson is a different place that we're learning to experience growing up. From how I grew up, you know, in Jackson, it's a different experience now. Just even with the festivals, the Hispanic Heritage Festivals, the art festivals, all those different festivals that go on. It's a different experience, you know, in Jackson, and to see you guys evolve too, it's a different experience, you know what I mean? And so you guys have been a part of that journey, and that's a blessing. That's amazing. So,
Well, thanks so much. Great to see
Yes,
you
sir.
both. Thanks.
All right. Thanks so much for having us, man.
appreciate you, Bart.
All right.
The Willis, the world famous Willis family, John Willis and his son Jay Willis, with us today on JTV.